Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here. So I've been playing Zenless Zone Zero for a really long time now, since closed beta 1, 2 and 3, all 3 I've been playing. And in this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to make a good team comm if you have no idea what to get started. Even if you're an experienced player watching already, you tried some betas, this video likely will add some value to you as well as I share my thoughts. So first of all, let's start off with the super basic. I want to ease into it, don't give you too much technical things straight away. You can just like listen to it and chill. The most important thing that is very easy to see once you get into your team selection menu is this smiley face you see on the bottom. If you notice, there's this additional ability because of the smiley face. This can be procced in two ways. One is having characters of similar elements, or two, lore-wise, they come from the same faction, be it Cunning Hairs, the Maid Squad, the Engineering Squad, etc, etc. Those are all considered like faction-based units as well. So you can see here, all three are different elements. Armby is electric, Billy is physical, Nicole is ether, but they all are smiley face because of the faction bonus. Is this significant? Is this substantial? It actually is quite a lot. As you can see, each of them have their own unique abilities. So there is no like generic like fire damage increased by 15% if you're 2 fire on the team. Not in this case, not in Zenless Zone Zero. The additional abilities are specific for characters and it's pretty useful. So let's just take Nicole for example. When you have her ability procced, this additional ability, she basically gains, the target has a debuff that takes more ether damage, which in this case, because you only have one ether character, it buffs Nicole's damage, but in a case where you have multiple ether characters, Nicole becomes like a massive ether buffing unit later on when we have more ethers in the same team. So that's something very unique and something you want to proc. So the second way, of course, is the same elements as we kind of like teased a little bit. Let me just swap Nicole out for a character like Corin. Corin has nothing in similarity in terms of faction lore-wise to Armby as well as Billy, but she shares the same element as Billy, that's why now you can see here Corin has this smiley face. You can see 3 out of 3 additional abilities currently activated as well. I can just show you a quick demo. I'll just switch Billy out for Nicole and immediately Corin just switches off. Now it's like not activated. Now you can see here additional ability activated is like 2 out of 3 and of course Corin's ability is no longer activated. So just a quick introduction. Secondly is, now let's talk a bit more about, we get into a bit of technicalities. What are the differences in characters other than faction and their element? So these are very easy to see, like they have same faction in lore, same faction in typing. You want to proc the same additional ability. That is kind of easy, intuitive to tell. But beyond that, you want to build characters that fulfill different roles. Ideally, you want to tackle many different ones so you have more variety to get through the early to mid game. I'm not building meta teams right now for the end game content. The end game content is going to be very different, which I'll touch on in more specific videos. This video is mainly just to help you get started with the least amount of wastage as you can go. For any of you who are wondering, you can work perfectly fine with a team of Armby, Nicole and Billy to get started. Nothing wrong with each of them. I personally like Armby the most out of all 3. Billy is great for starters. I'm just doing a bit of commentary on the 3 of them. And Nicole I think will scale best into the end game when we have more Aether units, as we talked about her additional ability too. So how do you want to build team compositions? First thing is you must know that each character has a unique purpose, or rather 5 different purposes. This is recently introduced in the CBT 3. In 1 and 2, never had such things. If you see here, it's electric / stun. What stun is, basically she's like a character or characters of the stun class focus on building up days, which is important because you want to trigger additional damage. You will have like the swap in mechanic where you're trying to do additional damage on the target. You hit that trigger point to also deal additional damage to units, build up these days. Stun units, very helpful. That's I think the first type that you have. I'm just going to introduce you to the 5 different types as well. You have characters, for example like Billy in this case, who is of the attack class, which specializes in doing a lot of damage very quickly, doesn't build up too much days, doesn't touch on too many other things. You have other characters like Grace, who is specializing in anomaly class, who is really looking at building up debuffs to trigger a lot of the elemental damage, I would call, or the anomaly based damage. That's a bit more complicated. We'll talk about that in another video which we have. We talked a bit about elemental weaknesses and triggering elemental reactions, anomaly reactions on our channel. If you're interested in more in-depth guides on that, you can check it out. But that's the third type. And of course we have, I think, 1 or 2 more. The second last one will be defense typing, which is what Ben is. It has a much stronger ability, able to like counter attack enemy. Very good for especially if you are not too good at perfect dodging. You want a bit more tankiness Ben is a very, very solid character, defense characters like that too. And last but not least, of course, you have the support class, which if I'm not wrong is Sokaku here, which is of the support class, which basically helps the team either by buffing teammates, crowd controlling, or basically, as they say here, in improving the overall combat effectiveness of the whole squad. For example, like Nicole is also of the support typing, as you guys will know. So how do you build a team? Very simply, I like to put in a very simple strategy, a mix between supports, DPSs, and the like. I always like to fit them the support in the center and the 2 damage dealers if you are playing on the extreme side. Why does this matter is, let me just show you and go into a game mode real quick. The order matters because your rotations will be affected by it. And I'll teach you guys a bit of tricks in terms of how I put my controls and stuff in a little fashion. But you can see they swap out in order. So as you can see, we had Anbi first, and then Nicole, and then Billy. So you will rotate in order, and it's very nice to have your support in the second slot, so you get a bit of a pivot rotation when you want to like just quickly do some support ability, rotate into your DPS to do some damage on your DPS slot. So DPS, an example, DPS, support, DPS. Very, very simplistic, very straightforward way of looking at things to build a team composition, for the very beginning at least. Then comes what DPS and what support do you want to play. There are a few different types. Let me just go back here first. I think that if you are just getting started, Anbi is a really, really solid option. She's quite fast, quite mobile, easy to play, not too much mechanics, complicated enough because she has an electric and physical mode which you need to get used to. I think Anbi is a great starting character to learn most of the mechanics in the game. Support characters, on the other hand, you want to play units, for example, like Grace in this slot, you play Nicole in this slot, Ben, Sokaku. These characters all probably would fill up a spot like this. Rena will also be a possible 2 or 3 position, depending on how you want to play. And the last slot, I generally like to play a character that of an opposing objective. So if Anbi is like the stun class, I want to look for a character with the attack class and maybe preferably have a bit of range. So you want to diversify not only to the melee combat, but you also want a bit of range. The reason for that is if you're a new player, you're struggling to learn the mechanics of the game, you're struggling to get into the feel of how to quick dodge and all that. Billy is excellent for new players in the game because you can ignore a lot of the quick dodging, timing, what the boss does, and you can hit from a range and you observe what's going on. Makes it a lot more easier to manage for most new players in the game. But once you get a hang of things, I personally no longer use Billy too much. Very good for the start, but later off, there are much better alternatives. I like to use Grace in most of my later game team compositions because of the quick swapping ability that Grace provides as well. But we'll touch on that more difficult comps in a little bit. So for example, a team composition like this would be decent if Ben were of course of a smiley face here. So maybe you can play, for example, like Anton in the last slot to prop all 3. So you have double electric here, so Anbi gets a buff. You have a bit of a double DPS where Anbi is focused on stun. Anton is a attack type unit, focuses on dealing damage. So you get a bit of daze, you get a bit of damage. You get Ben, who's a defensive character, rounds up your team. Although it's all melee, so ideally you want to put in a bit of range, especially if you're a new player, not too familiar with a lot of the characters. That is probably how I would build my first few teams to just get started into the game. And if you are interested in worried about which character scales better into the late game, you're worried you build a character that in the end you don't use, so all your resources will be left on the bench, do check out our other guides on the channel which talks about efficiency, and we'll do more in-depth guides on mixed comps, mixed element comps, and what makes them so good too. And thank you guys so much for watching. See you next video.